trouble snuck up on Darcy Bowker. She first noticed something was wrong out for a run in 2016. Mid-stride, her vision would suddenly go black for a moment, then return. The blackouts were brief, but the headaches that followed were not. After she fainted, she told herself it was probably dehydration or low blood sugar. But the episodes kept coming, and before long, they were leading to week-long stays in hospital in Kingston, Ontario.
It took about a year to diagnose what was going on at that time, and it's something called a pheochromocytoma. Basically, what's happening is there is a tumor on my adrenal gland that was releasing mass amounts of adrenaline. So any activity or even movement, so if I turned a certain way, it would secrete the adrenaline and skyrocket my blood pressure and heart rate, and then I would have a lot of symptoms because of that.
So doctors removed Darcy's adrenal gland, and for a bit, she felt like herself again. She went in for regular screenings, the kind you hope will always come back clear. But then the tests revealed a gene mutation that could trigger tumors on any nerve bundle, a condition called paraganglioma. From that moment, she was under constant monitoring, and sure enough, more tumors appeared. One on her liver, not benign. Then 10 more throughout her body. A PET scan delivered the news no one wants: metastatic neuroendocrine cancer. Incurable. Then a slim chance appeared. If she acted fast, if her doctors acted fast, she could get into a groundbreaking clinical trial using Theranostics, a pioneering approach to treating neuroendocrine cancers. It was her only shot at survival. This is Carry the Fire, a podcast by the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation featuring inspiring personal stories about what happens when world-leading doctors, researchers, and their patients come together to ignite breakthroughs in cancer diagnostics, research, and treatment. This is a podcast about innovation and radical hope. I'm your host, Lisa Laflamme. In this episode, the life-extending promise of Theranostics. On November 4th, 2020, at the height of the pandemic, Darcy left her 2 young children in Peterborough with her mother and set out on the hour-and-a-half drive to downtown Toronto with her dad. She was heading to meet Dr. Rebecca Wong, a radiation oncologist and clinician scientist. Today, Dr. Wong is at the newly launched Silber Family Theranostics Center at Princess Margaret Cancer Center. Darcy's father had to wait in the car. She went inside alone, carrying the weight of hope, fear, and everything she might lose.
And she said there was metastatic disease, multiple tumors, and they were cancerous.
Oh my goodness. What was happening in your head as you're hearing Dr. Wong outline what's going on inside your body?
I remember grabbing onto one thing, and that was, do I have to stop breastfeeding? And that was all I could think about, and what I was going to do and how that would work.
When you got back down to the car, did you burst out crying? What did you do?
I don't remember how I got from the room to the car, that feeling. And I was like, I think she said I have cancer. And he was like, what? No, you misheard that. And so I think it was about a 2-hour drive or hour and a half to Peterborough. And I think we just kept going back and forth on okay, well, what did she say?
There was little time to think, let alone process. Dr. Wong had a plan, but it needed to happen soon.
Everything moved very quickly. So because the treatment I got was a study, I actually had to be signed up for that study before the new year. So I had about 2 months.
Why was the immediate treatment a study?
My medical understanding is that there was a protein in all of these tumors that this particular medication would attach itself to and be effective, hopefully. Although in Canada, it was only approved for mid-gut tumors. And because I think I have like between 9 and 11 tumors throughout my whole body. And chemo, while that's previously been an option, we know is not very successful. But this study, they had a lot of proof that it should be successful. Explaining that to family is obviously frightening. That's kind of like, this is my only option right now.
Basically, you're told you have cancer and the treatment we're going to give you is the last option. So what had they told you about your own prognosis?
So the only thing that I've really got, even in this full time frame, is that it's incurable. So I know that remission isn't a possibility. And then ultimately, like, being cured is not a possibility.
This is so much information to absorb for you, or a young mom and a brand new baby, essentially. How did you, in those early days, manage to keep on, basically, the role of mother, regular life, driving from A to B, knowing you've got these tumors inside your body that need immediate treatment?
I was definitely fearful, but I was more fearful to do chemo, for example. Like, based on just my own reading, I felt like chemo felt like we've got nothing else, so we might as well try this. I think it's actually in some ways helpful that treatment happened so quickly, because I think when you are told there's this terrible thing happening in your body, action is really helpful. So had I had to sit in that longer, I think that actually would have been more challenging.
To understand exactly how the treatment works, I met with Darcy's doctor, radiation oncology specialist, Dr. Rebecca Wong.
There are neuroendocrine cells throughout the body, and when they turn cancerous, they can become these neuroendocrine tumors. Usually they grow very slowly and they can spread, and patients do unfortunately succumb to it. They can change in characteristics from very well, slowly growing tumor and over time become more aggressive. So it's a very complex form of cancer because it can secrete hormones beyond its local impact on the body. It can also secrete hormones that result in what we call carcinoid syndrome.
So for someone hearing the term for the very first time, how would you explain Theranostics?
Theranostic is a play on the word on therapy and diagnostic. So as you can relate to in cancer, the word breast cancer or lung cancer, within these broad categories, there are many different types of cancer subgroups. And these theranostic drugs are designed to be able to recognize them, attach themselves to these abnormal cells. The further unique part of these drugs is that they have a radioisotope attached to it. So when you attach a radioisotope that just emits some radiation, we can use specially designed cameras, PET scans, to see where these cells are. And if we change the radioisotope to a more powerful radioisotope, it can emit radiation that can damage the cells and therefore control the cancer and hopefully in the future cure cancers through this mechanism. But perhaps more important in its future is that it's like a Lego piece. You can change the Legos bits and make it more effective and target different things, deliver different doses.
Such a bespoke form of treatment, really, like having a suit made. But from your perspective, how is Theranostics different from the more traditional cancer treatments like chemotherapy or radiation?
The beauty about radiotheranostics is you can pick radioisotopes that only travel a few millimeters or a fraction of a millimeter, depending on the radioisotope that you select. So as a result, it generally have very favorable toxicity profile. So take an example. If I want to treat a lump of cancer that is sitting next to the stomach, and it sits right next to it, I have to deliver some dose to the stomach. There's no way around it to get at the tumor. But with radiotheranostics, you inject it into the body, the radiotheranostics hug around the tumor, the radiation is being emitted from inside out. So whilst it may still deliver some radiation to normal structures, it spares normal structures much more dramatically. Now, comparing it with chemotherapy, chemotherapy generally works by affecting the cell cycle. So it's selected in such a way that it damages the cancer cells more than normal cells, but it's not differentiating it physically. So normal tissues will still see these drugs and therefore have side effects. I don't want to say there's no side effects with radiotheranostics, but the ability to spare normal structures because of how it works changes the profile of toxicity, minimizes it, and allow us to use it in combination with some of the known modalities, and again, achieve things that we couldn't achieve before we have these tools.
Darcy was the last patient accepted into Dr. Wong's clinical trial. Until that point, the only way to access Theranostics was to go to Europe. And if the European trials were any indication, she might gain up to 5 years of relief from the cancer. The idea being that, while still incurable, the cancer could be treatable as a chronic condition.
For some of the younger patients like Darcy, yes, it's a slow-growing tumor, but they have many years ahead of them. And they want a treatment that can render them free of symptoms and not be committed to long-term treatments.
What was the treatment like?
Not actually as crazy as I was told it would be, but I was radioactive. Approximately 10 to 12 days post-treatment, I had to isolate because they needed the radiation to be removed from my system. So then that was every 6 weeks for about 6 months.
How did they administer that?
It was an injection, but it was a wild experience just in how I'd stay in my room and they'd bring it in a very special box and all have to gown up themselves to administer.
Is it a dropper or?
Yeah. Each time we kind of had to play with it a little bit. So first, just to figure out how I was responding, nausea is like a common side effect. So really, really slow over the first treatment. And then I responded quite well. So then after every treatment, we got to make it a little bit quicker. I think that's a weird thing that people in treatment don't talk about, is that I expected to feel very different or something big to happen while I was receiving the dosage, and it's just like an IV. I didn't feel anything.
I'm really focusing here on the fact that you had to separate from your kids.
Yeah,
for those.
That was so hard.
Tell me about that during treatment.
So up until that point, I'd never left them. I was also a single mom, so didn't have a partner to depend on in that aspect. Thank goodness for my parents. They helped out a ton during this period, and so my mom would come to Kingston and be with my babies, who were 1 and 2. And then my dad would take me to Toronto. I would stay in Toronto for 4 days and then go to our family home in Peterborough, but have to isolate in the basement. There's lots of interesting rules too. Like you have to, if you go to the washroom, you have to flush multiple times. You're not allowed to use regular utensils. You have to use disposable utensils and disposable plates and all of that. So just very interesting little things like that. But that was really hard for me. And then I would go back to Kingston. But even then, they said to keep contact minimal. So how do you explain that to a 1 and 2-year-old, right? And so my mom would stay for a couple extra days at least and kind of balance that out a little bit with me. But then we were right back into the swing of things and getting them off to daycare and me getting to work. But then as soon as you're done, nothing is done. And the sitting in that was actually way, way harder for me than the actual treatment. There was a period of time I wished I was still in treatment so that I would feel like I was doing something.
That is powerful. So you go through these, was it 4 doses you had to go
4
through?
doses, yeah, over 6 months.
Over 6 months, and then what? They say, okay, your treatment is done, and now we're going to monitor you in a couple of months or something like that. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah. So every 3 months, I was monitored. So I would go up to Toronto, do scans, blood work, and doctor's appointments. And that's an added component. I think we talk about like the cancer world and the non-cancer world. But then within the cancer world, there's all of these different types of cancer, and one of them being incurable cancers. And I think that is a realm all on its own. And I think I had a lot of grief over the idea of what it's like living with an incurable cancer and what that means.
What is that like?
Weird. I think I've had to learn to compartmentalize it. I think that I was forced to be busy and forced to go about everything. I also worked during my treatment and just wanted everything to stay as much the same as possible, which I think is just an individual choice. Everybody feels differently about that. But one thing I really recognized when I finished treatment was that I had spent those 6 months being petrified of any future thinking. So everything was about, I just need to get through today. I just need to get to the next treatment. And then it's all done. I really struggled for the next couple of months figuring out, like, am I allowed to think about next year? And is it safe for me to think about 3 years from now? And that's when I decided to go back to school, actually. It wasn't even ever about actually finishing school. It was about committing to something that wouldn't be done for at least 3 years.
For the first time, Darcy could think beyond the next procedure, beyond today, and it was overwhelming. To reclaim a sense of forward momentum, she returned to school to train as a psychotherapist. It wasn't about finishing the degree quickly. It was about committing to something that would take years, a proof that life could stretch beyond cancer. As a single mom of 2 little girls, that meant everything. But even with that step forward, the shadow of her illness remained.
In the cancer community, it's called scanxiety. um,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's a whole lead up to that for sure.
Are you one of those therapists who can practice what she preaches, or does it get
I think
tough?
I've learned so much in my real life that I can offer some real good suggestions. I think that life goes on, that, like, it doesn't have to stop a lot. It's another appointment on the calendar. It's another thing to pay attention to, but life can still happen in many beautiful ways.
Do you remember there being almost a moment of clarity for you on how to move forward?
So I do work a lot with people with chronic illness because of this. So in school, I was so passionate about it. And I was like, this is who I want to work with. I want to work with people who have been through something similar to me. And then I had my first client that also had chronic illness. And I was like, oh no, this is a lot. This brings up a lot for me. This is triggering. But I've since learned some skill. And something that comes through with pretty much every client is the idea of celebration. And I think that that's so key. And I think particularly with incurable cancers, but it exists in all chronic illness, is the ability to celebrate small wins. And the ring the bell is what I always come back to, is I never got to ring a bell, and I wish I got to ring a bell.
And for people who don't realize what happens at Princess Margaret, when you're clean, basically, when you're done your treatment, you ring this bell. I've seen it. It's very emotional every time and you want to ring that bell.
Yeah. And I don't get to, and I know that. And there's an ongoing grief in that. But I've had to create kind of like, what are my own bells? And so if I have an appointment where things stay the same, that's considered success for me. And so my family and friends know that means, like, we get a cake, or we go out for dinner, or we blow up a balloon.
I feel like you are this amazing personification of fear and hope.
Yeah.
That you've been living it.
And I think that's just something I say in practice, is that suffering, healing, and celebration can all coexist.
Suffering, healing, and celebration can coexist. And I guess they have to.
They have to.
Darcy entered the clinical trial in January 2021. When I spoke to her 5 years later, in January 2026, she was still going strong, a testament to the treatment and her resilience. What'd you do to celebrate?
I had a baby.
And that is the gift that keeps on giving, as we all know.
Sure is. Yeah. Yeah. So it's right around 5 years that I had a baby, and there was lots of fear in that pregnancy and lots of fear in the delivery, and it all went so smoothly, and things have been going very well since.
Do you think you would be a candidate for going back in for more of this Theranostics treatment?
I believe I would be. I have talked to Dr. Wong about that in the past. I when I did have a bit of the anxiety around the 5-year mark and having a baby, and if it did come back again, I always feel weird saying coming back because it's never left. But if it does grow, then would I have that option? So 5 years ago, when I was getting the treatment, there was very little evidence that you could repeat it, but there's since been quite a bit.
And this is something that is a genetic mutation. So this isn't just Darcy. This is your family.
Yeah. So I have two sisters, and both are positive for the gene mutation, which is a little bit surprising because it's a 50-50 chance. So all three of us have the gene mutation. All three of us do have tumors, but only mine are malignant.
So they have to go through this regular process also.
Mm-hmm. My youngest sister has had some negative outcomes from it. She did have to have a very major open heart surgery a couple of years ago, but is doing wonderfully now, just had a baby herself. And then my middle sister does have a couple of the tumors as well, but they're not negatively impacting any systems yet.
I can just imagine the bond you sisters have, knowing that you've all got something going on.
Even in the medical community, this mutation turning cancerous is so rare that their doctors rarely go down that path, but they have a direct example of it going that path. So I think that speaks to a different level of fear in this chronic illness, where the likelihood of it turning cancerous for them is so slim, but it did for me. And so they have a fear that I think even their doctors don't have, because their doctors don't necessarily know me.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, they actually have you to thank in a sense for.
And I've actually, both of their doctors have said that to them. Yeah.
Tell me about that conversation.
Yeah, well, because you wouldn't know about it unless you have symptoms, unless you're scanned. So I have 3 daughters, and my oldest daughter is positive for the gene mutation, but my other 2 are negative.
So that doesn't mean your daughter will develop cancer in her lifetime.
No, it also doesn't even mean she'll have any negative effect from the gene mutation. So we do a checkup once a year to make sure I'm not noticing any symptoms. And once she's old enough, we'll probably do a scan. So we could go down the whole path of responsibility to have children, knowing that you have gene mutations and all of that. But
did that go through your mind?
Yeah, definitely. My sister did a big process with all of that. And ultimately, I had already had kids before I knew, right? So I decided that was worth the risk, and we'll see. I'm also very hopeful for modern medicine. So by the time it affects them.
Look at you. I mean, it's really dramatic.
Yeah.
Was it tricky starting a relationship with someone and then having to say, oh, by the way, I have incurable cancer? How does that conversation go?
Yeah, that was a hard one. I would say just in dating, that was very challenging. By the time that I met him, I have a bit of a presence on social media, and I've really shared it out there. And I think that was huge for me in terms of really accepting that part of me. And so I think I was comfortable with it at that point.
What's next for you then, Darcy?
Raising my babies, building my practice. We just got back from Costa Rica, my family. So traveling and yeah.
So you're living just a regular life, it sounds like.
I really am. Yeah.
And this might be a weird question, but because you're raising the kids, going on holiday, in a great relationship, you've got a great growing career, do you think about cancer every day?
No, not every day.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
That must have been a lot of work, though.
It was,
really personal work to get to that point.
And I think it comes in waves. There's periods for sure where it feels so heavy and so overwhelming and so like looming on you, and the choices that you make in a day or the choices that you make for your family. I think that obviously plays into it huge. But I think I have got to a point where I've learned to manage that in a better way.
What keeps you so grounded?
One, my people. I think that the people that I have in my life, my family, my friends, I think that keeps me so grounded. And I think this has very much been me forever, but I love my life and I want to keep living my life. And there's so much I want to do and so much I want to see. And I think that keeps me focused and excited. I think it keeps me excited.
Watching the girls grow must just be such a beautiful part of that life.
Mhm.
Well, we are all rooting for you, Darcy, when you get into that next screening. Best hopes that nothing's grown and another 5 years will go by before you have to go back at that.
Well, thank you so much.
You've been listening to Carry the Fire from the Princess Margaret, a world-leading cancer research center. If you found this episode meaningful, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. To learn more, check the show notes and share this podcast with friends and family to help create a world free from the fear of cancer. I'm Lisa Laflamme. Thank you for listening.